Hi guys, and welcome back, and today we'll be building the Austin Light Utility Truck as part of the Bombing of Darwin diorama that I've just started. So we'll go through the brief unboxing next and then get stuck into the build of it. So we just have a look at what's inside the box, and obviously we've got a little instruction booklet, one plastic bag full of the sprues, and also has the decals in there. Then another separate little bag with the wheels and a couple of resin seats, and another little bag with a lot of little resin parts. The clear plastic canopy, which is the canvas, the rear canvas, which I won't be using, and then a little headlights and taillights, which I quite like the look of those, and then a coloured paint guide for 4 different variants, none of which I'll be using either. I'll be going for the sun-bleached Australian sort of khaki colour on this vehicle. So the paint instructions are good. There's different variations there. The instructions colour picture on the front. I won't go through all of the pages, but generally not too many steps in each stage. I started to get a feeling looking at this that there was a little bit of PE involved, and I'm still a little bit scarred from the gun, the Bofors gun, so I was slightly nervous about that. Some pretty crisp resin parts, and the wheels, not great details in the wheels, but given it's an ancillary vehicle, I'm not too fussed. The clear canopy I won't be using, and quite taken with these little headlights and tail lights, so looking forward to putting those on. Just looking at the sprues with the main part of the chassis, the moulding is actually quite crisp and good detail in it. Not too many parts, and not a lot of injection pin markings or anything like that, so reasonably crisp. But what I did notice in the instructions was a lack of detail as to where exactly to go. That was the clear window, the PE, which is quite a lot of little parts there, the decals, which I probably won't be using for this particular one because they're not Australian ones, and we'll get into having a look at the instructions next. So I just wanted to mention the first little hiccup that I discovered, which was the clear plastic for the windows. And as you can see in the instructions, it shows the front window and also shows left and right, which I assume would be the 2 side windows. But the actual plastic part that's provided is just the front window. So after I tipped the box inside out half a dozen times looking for perhaps another one, realised that there wasn't. So no huge problem, but just the first of a few little annoying things that came along. So into the build, and look, I'd have to say that overall the parts were pretty clean and crisp, and good detail, not spectacular detail. Started to get a sense as I was putting it together that there was a lack of precision in where certain things had to go, even to the extent of joining the 2 halves of the chassis together and making sure that the right width was maintained, because the front could have gone anywhere, so just had to be a little bit slow and a little bit careful. So this was my next little drama. Just one of the PE parts had broken off, and it actually existed when I was taking the photos at the start, and I must not have picked it up and put it back in the plastic bag. So again, luckily not a huge drama, just a nice little bit of wire, and sorry that I've taken my hands out of the picture, but effectively made the same part, and because once painted you really couldn't tell the difference. The next thing was putting on the PE for the window frame, I guess, and there's a moulded frame on there, which the instructions told you to remove, so it doesn't look good when it's sped up like this, but it was a little bit tricky because it's quite thin, so you had to be careful not to go too far, so I ended up taking probably about 2/3 of it off with the knife and then just filing it back in, but ultimately it came in okay. And then once the metal part was on, just a matter of trimming up any of the excess from the actual window itself and filing that away and making it all nice and smooth. And it looks odd, but when I look at photos of the truck, it looks the same. So I think it's accurate, but it just looks odd, certainly until it's painted. So on to the next little challenge, which was one of the resin chairs, and there's a moulding defect at the back of the chair where it joins the base, and was a little bit annoyed by that because I thought the whole point of the resin piece was to give you the high quality moulding. Anyway, we just added to the list of things that weren't quite right with this. So a little bit of the ultra fine black milliput, and just played around with that to fill it in and try and get a little bit of texture back into the seat fabric. You're not going to see a lot of it anyway, so I was pretty happy with how that came out in the finish. So next was the painting of the cabin interior, and I got a little bit obsessive with this. So I found a good photo of the interior of one of the Tillies, and then tried to replicate that with the timber grained dash and the dials and what have you. And actually started, and this is where I started to get into the kit and really started to enjoy it. And I really couldn't help myself here, given Michael Hamilcar Barkis's video a little while ago about the colour of tools, and I just had to paint the fire extinguisher red. No one will see it, but we all know it's red. So on to producing the clear side windows, and I just initially made a little template by trial and error more than anything out of some plasticard, I think 0.3mm plasticard, just so it was firm enough to make sure I could sand it and shape it and get it into the right look, because I wanted them partially down, half down or 3/4 down. And then I had to find some nice thin clear plastic, and of all things I found the plastic from the packaging on the A4 batteries, and it was really just a matter of taking my time and being careful, making sure I had a fresh blade in the X-Acto so it was nice and sharp, and then initially just stuck on with a little bit of blue tack, but found that wasn't strong enough to hold it, so you have to keep your finger firmly planted, and then gently score around the outside of that so you get a good impression, and then cut through a little bit more firmly. Have to cut cleanly on the clear plastic because you don't want to leave a bird edge that requires filing, otherwise that might start to make it look a little bit flat and odd. So I think they came out reasonably nicely. Hard to see, obviously, because you're transparent, but they look quite good in person. So the next little task was that when I test fitted the grill, you could see right through and see that there was nothing there. So I thought I'd just scratch build a barrier there, and in the form of a little radiator. Now, it's not even an attempt to replicate what an Austin Tilley's radiator looks like, because it's really just to block it out. Knocked it up together very quickly. Also gave a little bit of stability to the front end and kept the width right, which made it ultimately far easier to fit the PE grill. And for 5 minutes work, it just closed a gap and made things look a little bit tidier. So at this point in the build, started to see more of the PE come through, and as you'd know, I'd had some less than spectacular success with that, and I had been dreading it a little bit, but strangely, as I got into it, and I think because I was less rushed and probably more careful, I actually started to really enjoy it, and I really started to enjoy seeing the finished parts of the PE, the sub-assemblies, and then having them go onto the kit itself and really start to provide that extra detail. So somewhere around here, the kit became a great joy to build, and I really did fall in love with it, to tell you the truth. It was very strange. But so just a little bit of footage here of my enhanced PE skills, and then it started really with the underside and putting in the exhaust systems, and then there was PE to hold the shock absorbers together and toe parts, and even little bits that were broken that I managed to fix. So it all became quite good fun, which I was quite surprised at because I had been dreading it all. And so on with the painting, and initially just did a base coat because I hadn't primed this because I didn't want to lose any of the detail of the small photo etch, so I wanted it to be a fairly thin mixture. So I just went with some Russian green, the Vallejo Model Air, and to give it a nice thin coat and sort of have it as the undercoat and dark shade at the same time. And then just a few progressively lighter coats of plain old khaki, and just mixed in a little bit of white paint with that as we went along. And at this point it might look like I've completely lost my mind, because why would I be painting it a light blue colour? And it's really because it's one of the few stories that Dad ever told about his war experience. It's always been in my mind to replicate that in one way, shape or form. So the story goes that they one evening in the pub, after probably many, many beers, lent their unit's truck to a guy who was a butcher. And I think they probably thought it was just to help him out over the next day to do some deliveries, but the guy disappeared with their truck, and so they then spent a couple of weeks tracking this bloke down, and finally found him and found their truck, and he'd painted it blue and put signage on it that it was his meat delivery vehicle, and so they had to get that back and very quickly repaint it. So I've done that. A couple of things didn't work as well as I would have liked. The labelling on the side, I wanted to do my own water slide decals, but I couldn't get hold of the transfer film. I got hold of some transfer film, but it was not for a inkjet printer, so what I put on and then sprayed over in the hope that I could just scrape back, it just looked horrible. So I ended up having to do some remediation work on that a few different times, and peel that was just normal printer paper. Peel that off and then try and make it look scuffed up, and that didn't really work as well. And so then I took that off completely and tried to paint it on by hand, and I wasn't happy with that. That didn't come up as well as I would have liked either. And then I realised that I had become irrationally focused on this little sign, and whilst it's only a minute or so of video footage, it's probably about 3 or 4 days of time I should have been building stuff or finishing the painting, trying to get this sign right. So in the finish, I gave up on the hand painting and I sprayed over this part yet again, and it just wasn't giving me the effect that I liked or that I was looking for, and the scuffing up of it was actually detracting from the overall look of the model. I'd envisaged that you'd just see a faint outline or a faint ghosting of the signage on the side of the truck, but my hand painting skills aren't good enough and it just didn't look right. So ultimately compromised when I realised that for the sake of the diorama it was only a minor part, and resprayed completely. So I took it back, masked it off so I could get the right size, did the little unit marking on the right front divisional sign, which is the red over blue triangle for the light anti-aircraft, and ultimately settled for that, and then did the overspray again in the khaki and then the lighter shades of khaki to simulate the bleaching from the sun. And I think I'm happy with that in the finish, and in doing the weathering and the chipping, enough of it comes through to be relevant, so ultimately it came out okay. So getting towards the end now, and look, I'd painted the tyres in just a flat black and sort of more of the Russian green than khaki for the rims because I wanted them a bit darker, and then just really lightly dry brush some, this is desert sand because they're very dusty out in the fields in Darwin, and it's a dry red dirt, and I'll do all of the final colouring with pigments once everything's in place on the Dio base. But yeah, just very light and smudged it in to give it that worn look, and I think they look nice and worn. Filed down the bottoms just to simulate the weight. A little bit more off the back 2 tyres than the front 2 tyres because there'll be a load in the back. And then putting the decals on, and in all honesty, this was probably the most disappointing part of the whole kit. The decals were really, they were really horrible. They took ages to come off when I was soaking them. I normally dip them in for about 30 seconds at the most and they come off. These I had to have in there for ages, like over a minute first minute and a half, and they were stubborn to come off, and they were even with the microsol and the microset, they were very difficult to work with. So I'm not sure if they were just old or if that's what you get with this manufacturer. But anyway, it persevered, and I think they came up. They were okay in the finish, but it just seemed a lot harder work than it normally is, and a lot harder to move them around once you got them on the surface. And so that's pretty much it. At this point, just having a quick look at the four angles and test fitting the stowage in the back, which I'll paint up and glue in after I do the sort of weathering with the washers. At that point, we'll come back for a quick 360 and then a bit of a slideshow of the finished model. So with the washers, I like using burnt umber, but I put a little bit of vermilion in this mix just to get that redness coming through. And again, normally when I do this, I'll put the first coat on and I'll pretty quickly come in straight away with the white spirit to remove it. This I decided to let it dry because I really wanted to get a good solid build up in the low spots, and I was worried that I'd wash them away if I came back too quickly. So I came back in, and again, really just keeping the brush clean and rinsing it off, and then going back into the white spirit, and then taking off what stain I don't want there, and then keep getting the brush clean again, and just repeating that process. So until you get it right, until you get it to your satisfaction. I don't think there is a right. And so that's it. And look, it was a really enjoyable kit to build in the finish. I started off perhaps not enjoying it, but there was a point, and I think when I started to see all the detail of the PE coming together, that it actually became a huge amount of fun. And in all honesty, I'm really happy with it. I just think this isn't a very militaristic term, but I think it's just a really cute vehicle, and it's come up nicely. And mucking around with the blue paint and trying to bring that story into the diorama, whilst it was a little bit of fiddling around, I think came out really nicely. I think the stowage looks quite good with the ammunition and the milk urn and the sack, and I realised when I was doing this that I'd made a scratch-built sack in the Russian diorama, and I'd made a scratch-built sack in the Jag Panther diorama, and I decided that I'd use a resin one here because I'm definitely not going to be defined by my sack making dioramas. Anyway guys, a few pictures to look at. I'll come back and say goodbye at the end. I hope you've enjoyed it. Cheers. So that's it, and thanks very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you maybe picked up a couple of little tips here and there along the way, if anything, of what not to do, some of the mistakes that I made in getting this together. If it's the first time you've watched, then please remember to subscribe so you can keep up to date with all of the new postings as they come along. And the next one up will be the diorama base for this diorama, which I've started on, so it should be only a couple of weeks away. And then following that will be the figures and the final reveal, so almost halfway through the whole thing. Again, thanks very much for your time. I really do appreciate it. Look forward to seeing your comments, and take care everyone. Thanks very much. Bye.